The philosophy of YouTube, because the medium is the message. I remember when I started out doing YouTube, I was aware that what I was making was very niche. And I've since learned that that is in fact a good thing, and I embrace it now. But at the time, I was aware of this nebulous thing called the YouTube community, and I was also aware that I didn't really feel part of it. Political scientist Benedict Anderson talks about imagined communities. And he's talking about nations specifically, but I think his ideas are applicable to YouTube as well. He thought that a nation was an imagined community because most of the people in my nation I will never meet. I just imagine that they are there. And I imagine that I have something uniquely in common with all of them, even though there are plenty of people outside my nation that I probably have more in common with many of the people who are in it. I also imagine my nation as separate from other nations, when really what goes on around the world massively impacts what goes on here, and they're perhaps not really as separable as I might have thought. By imaginary, Anderson doesn't mean that communities or nations are not important or not real. What he means is closer to what nowadays we might call socially constructed. And it's interesting to reflect on what we use to construct an imaginary community and what we don't use and what we ignore. When imagining a nation, we pay attention to some similarities and differences and we ignore other ones. Like language is a big thing in imagining a nation into existence. Even though there are plenty of people around the world who speak the same language as me, though we would not say are part of my nation, and there are people in my nation who speak my language maybe as a second, third language, or even not at all, who are still very much a part of it. Race and religion are unfortunately big factors as well. There are still people in my country, wealthy, educated, powerful people, who treat Muslim and British as if they are necessarily separate categories. Country of birth, interestingly, not always a deal breaker. Boris Johnson is British. He was born in Manhattan. Anyway, I think it's very interesting to talk about what features we use to imagine the YouTube community. Dan Olson has a great video on how there's an editing style which is common to YouTube, which is kind of like a visual language. There are some common worries and lines of chat and terms of art, like when YouTubers talk about commenters or analytics or moan about advertisers and so on. People talk about sub-communities on YouTube as well. I've heard of the skeptic community, referred to somewhat euphemistically sometimes. There's the beauty community, the vlogging community. If you're ever backstage at a YouTube event, you might hear YouTubers talk about the Gleam team, who are a small group of very, very big YouTubers who all have the same management company, Gleam Futures. There have been two moments where I have felt I've crossed a threshold and become part of a YouTube community. The first was when I won YouTube Next Up, which was a competition in the UK a couple of years ago, and YouTube took me down to London and I got to see YouTube Space London and they gave me a manager, and I felt at that moment that YouTube, the company, had recognised me as a creator, and it felt legit. The other moment was, I suppose, a collection of moments, but it was at Summer in the City 2017, which interestingly was my second Summer in the City. And I said to one of the organisers, Tom Burns, afterwards, I said, "Thanks, Tom, you've really made me feel like one of the gang this year," because I was asked to host panels at the event, and I was on panels at the event, and I got up on stage and played Mario Kart with a bunch of people, and I just felt part of it all. And it's interesting how something as simple as playing Mario Kart on a stage with a bunch of acquaintances really had quite a powerful emotional resonance for me. And when I said thank you to Tom and said, "You've made me feel like one of the gang," he said, "You are one of the gang, Ollie." And that just made me feel great. Events like that and achieving community membership that way is of course predicated on being able to afford to go to events like that, and also being invited and being given a backstage wristband and all the rest of it. I got to know friends like Matt Lay and Birdkeeper Toby and Stephen Bridges through YouTube Next Up, and they were very much my kind of gateway to getting to know socially other British YouTubers. There are social and material gateways to that kind of community membership, and the social ones are very, very important. There are some British YouTubers who are, in my opinion, rightly excluded from the backstage goings-on of events like Summer in the City because of the way they've used their platforms in the past to hurt people both inside and outside that community. As an actor, I often get told that acting is an industry of relationships, and I think arguably the same is true of YouTube. It's also interesting what is not seen as a factor to help construct the imaginary YouTube community. For instance, the fact that we make money for Google is not really talked about very often, or at least I haven't seen it talked about. The fact that we are the workers in the workers' capital equation just doesn't really come up. I have spoken before in print and on YouTube about the need for a YouTube trade union to kind of tie us together and make people realize that, hey, we're the workers, we're the ones putting in the work, and therefore we have common interests. But people so far are somewhat reluctant to talk about that sort of thing. So the YouTube community is imaginary, and that imagining is haphazard and weird and inconsistent and oddly weighted. But that said, the moments when I do feel part of it, and it's not always, sometimes I seem to sort of go in and out, the moments where I do feel part of it, I feel really good. And I think of other YouTubers who I know, not as my colleagues, arguably I should think of them that way, but more as my friends. And not as imaginary friends, but real ones. Patreon.com/philosophytube helps me pay rent and stay alive. Please consider signing up and giving me a couple of dollars a month if you like what I do. Or for one-time donations, I have a tip jar at paypal.me/philosophytube.